Hey, can you see me?
I can.
Hey, hold on just a second. I'm going to put you on here, Eric, as a um actually, why don't we do this? Let's say good morning and go to work. I'm gonna turn this over to you, Eric, because this is sort of your expertise and your specialty, and you know the good stuff. So why don't I just turn this over to you and you can introduce us and go to work and then we'll answer some questions.
All right. Good morning, guys. Welcome to Monday morning, and we're going to start this off with a couple introductions. My name is Eric Herdman. My area of expertise is on results, outcome, productivity, and focus. And today we're going to look at 6 tips to create a productive meeting. I'm going to handle the teaching component, which is a small component of the overall presentation today. And then we're going to flip it to Lori for a few minutes, and then we'll take some questions. With me today is Lori Richards. She is an expert at presentations and communication and assertiveness training, and really just anything that encompasses standing up in front of people, whether it be a person or a group of people. And so she's very kind in saying this is my area of expertise, but she's been known to put on a good meeting every now and then as well. So that's why she fits in today very well with this, and that's why we are working together on a lot of our things, because I handle the productivity side, the focus, the direction to get things done. And Lori kind of comes in and here's the how-to to do that so we don't ruffle any feathers and we look professional and we really put our best selves out there. So let's get started. Out of the 6 tips, we're going to start with a little bit of a story here that kind of prompted us to do this webinar for you. I was reading an article about Jeff Bezos, the founder and creator of Amazon, and how he conducts meetings. And this article was it was amazing about the way they conduct meetings. And I'm always interested in corporate culture and that sort of thing. So this one just had me just dive right in. The first 30 minutes of the meeting, he hands out memos, directives, potential policy updates and changes and that sort of thing. And he hands them out to the people in the room. And for the next 20 to 30 minutes, they set a timer and they read these memos, these directives, these paragraphs, 2 paragraphs of ideas, potential ideas that they want to implement. So for 20, 30 minutes, they're all in the meeting room sitting very quiet. At the end of the 20, 30 minutes, the alarm goes off and then the meeting begins. Now, what you're encouraged to do in this meeting is when you're given, your notes or whatever you're given to look over that day, you're encouraged to make notes, questions you might want to ask, what ifs, yeah, buts, why is this important? Will this really work? And then the meeting starts at that point and you can contribute. Now, I know that that's not appropriate for everybody's corporate culture, but I do think that there's a lesson there. And that is not one of the official tips, but I wanted to give you kind of a bonus here and start off by telling you, could that planning be done ahead of time? Could you do that not in the room? I realize the reason it's not appropriate for everybody's corporate culture or association to pull everybody in and just sit idle for 20 minutes. I know that there's work being done, but you get the idea. Could you send things out like that ahead of time? In advance of the meeting, could you send these things out via email and say, hey, make your notes, be prepared, because when the meeting starts, we're going to go. So I like that idea a lot, because one of the things that I put in the title of this presentation was how to stop meeting go round, how to stop talking a lot and not saying anything. And so that's where we want to go. And that's why I start off by telling you that story of how this can work, how it's working right now at Amazon and how it can possibly work in your organization. And without taking the 20, 30 minutes of everybody sitting in a room idle, although that does sound like a really good way to start. Point number 1 to start with, have an agenda, make an agenda. Somebody's got to know what's going down in this meeting, what is supposed to happen. Now, I'm a big fan of an agenda no matter what, no matter how big or small the meeting is. I've encouraged leaders over the years to have stand-up and walking meetings, but I encourage them to go with their journal, a 3x5 index card, something so that somebody in this situation has control and some focus. And so have an agenda. If you're putting on the meeting, you need as much agenda as you need. There's no big rules here on this. Is that something, if it can be bullet points, it can be handwritten. You can spend time typing it out and making an outline. Obviously, the more detail, the better. And again, everybody's a little different. Some people are pretty much going into a meeting are okay with just a few bullet points. Some will need more. But tip number one, start by having an agenda. And this requires a little bit of planning and prep. And I know that's not something people want to hear as, oh, I got to take some time to plan and prep a meeting. Yes. If you want to have a good, well-structured, productive meeting, it requires planning and focus and attention. And that is done outside of the meeting, and it starts with an agenda. Again, the rule is as much as you need, but as little as you can get away with in an agenda. So tip number one, and make sure you're writing these down because Lori and I, again, will kind of come back in with questions, and we're going to cover a few things on these 6 tips today. So you want to make sure you have some of these in room to write some notes. So number one, make an agenda. Now, still in tip number one, make sure you stick to the agenda. There are people out there I call derailers. They will try to hijack and derail your agenda. Don't let them. You're standing up, you're being professional, and you're going to stick to your agenda. One of the best ways, and Lori can address this specifically, but one of the best ways to do this is to pre-call. We're going to work through the agenda first. I have a few minutes. You can be very specific. I have 6.5 minutes scheduled at the end of this to allow for discussion and new business and that sort of thing. So let them know that if there's anything off the agenda, it will be handled. I do have time, and that sometimes quiets those people down that want to derail and hijack the meeting. So stick to the agenda. Point number 2, start and end on time. One of the best ways to get buy-in from a group is to start and end on time. One of the best ways to discourage people from being late is to start and end on time. A lot of people say, okay, I can start on time. Make sure you end on time too. It's not open-ended, okay? It's not like an open-ended airline ticket and you can just have fun on your vacation, traveling all the way across the country, doing stuff with your family, and just come home when you want to. No, it ends on time too. I like the idea of weird times. And I've always talked about this in all of my seminars on productivity and time management. And when we get to meetings, I always talk about starting the meeting at 9:11, starting it at 9:34. The meeting will start at 10:10. Why is this? It sticks out in people's mind, doesn't it? We're so used to the 9 o'clock meeting, the 9:15 meeting. Oh, that's our noon meeting on Thursday. No, it starts at 12:02. It starts at 1:07. It sticks out in people's minds. Now, you'll be surprised if you can pull this off. You'll be surprised. People are like, oh boy. He starts these right on time. He says it starts at 1:07. It starts at 1:07. Folks, for a long time, I did a lot of public seminars. And I had a contract with a company, and I would do public seminars. We went to lunch every day at 12:02, and we started back the seminar at 1:07. I used to stand up there and hold the clock up. That's when, the clocks weren't really on our phones. We had a clock on the table, old school. I had to put batteries in it too. It didn't charge up. I had to put batteries in it every once in a while. Hold up, say it's 12:02. It's time to go to lunch. Now, I was always on time. I was never asleep at the switch. But people looked at me like, wow, he's serious. And you know what? That was just reinforcing the message that at 1:07, I bet the bald man's going to start back. Sure enough, I'd walk up in front of the room at 1:07, hold the phone up or the clock up, and it would say 1:07. And I would say, now let's get started. And you know what? If there were people still filtering in, that was on them. I gave them very specific time, very specific instructions. I made sure everybody knew where to go for lunch, all that kind of stuff. So you can do the same thing. But if you're going to use the weird times, you really got to be on point with those. Okay? Make sure that you do allow, and it's again a little side tip, some time on the end of your agenda to handle some new business so that you do have a way to handle people's new ideas, the thoughts, the stuff that comes in. And again, not only to stop the derailing that's happening, but also just have time to collect those ideas and you can recycle those into next week's agenda. Tip number 3, ban electronic devices. This electronic grazing that goes on in a meeting, let me do it right now for you. Oh, were you wanting me to talk? I got 3 new likes. I need to like my likes, and then I need to go over to Instagram and give some hearts to the people that liked my likes on Facebook. This internet grazing will derail your meeting, and you might not even know it's happening. Heads down in the lap. I mean, so here's, again, maybe not part of everybody's culture for this. And I realize that in some businesses and associations, this is the price of doing business. And so you have to have it. My suggestion is big, but you can scale this to however you need to do it. But I can tell you that this will derail you, and this will help you. This will help you not get the results and outcomes that you need. So there are a lot of ways over the years I've heard this done. It's like a coat check. So bigger meetings, 20, 30 people, sometimes what they do is they have a basket and they give you a number and they put your phone in a slot that has a corresponding number. And it's like your claim ticket. Oh, I have number 20. Okay, here's your phone. Good, thanks for coming. That sort of thing. Sometimes there's just a big basket by the door where people just drop their phones in there and they pick them up on their way out. This sort of thing is very, very productive. If you can get these devices out or under control, it will help you stay on point, on time, on target, and the meeting will be productive. So I do like that statement, ban electronic devices. And again, you can scale it to what your corporate culture, will allow. But that electronic grazing is very, very bad. And it's hard to stop it on a case-by-case basis. It's better just to say, hey, everybody, for our meeting today, no devices. You can leave them in your desk, leave them in your office, or we'll be collecting them in the room. Next tip, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. My last tip for this is encourage everyone to contribute. And for this, I take you back to where we started today. One of the best tips I got a while ago when I was talking to a group about meetings was somebody said that to me. Just what I told you in the beginning when I was telling you the Amazon story is we send out the agenda and any reference and supporting material ahead of time. And so that's why my interest in the Jeff Bezos article was just so paramount in my mind, because I'm thinking, wow, this has been around a while, and there's a lot of ways to scale this and make this, moldable to your workplace. But I do like the idea of sending things out ahead of time. You don't have to send the agenda if you can. I mean, the big package is nice. Here's the agenda. Here's some reference material of what you need to know to discuss and contribute. That's where it starts, doesn't it? Letting people know ahead of time that they're going to have to talk or say something is the best way to not have them freak out and be quiet and be a wallflower during the meeting. Letting them know ahead of time, here's what you need to know, and here's what I expect. And by the way, this can be very specific. And again, if you want people to talk, you have to make them comfortable in this environment. Not everybody is like myself and Lori, and we could just go on and on and on and talk all day. Some people are like, oh boy, and they wish they had their phone. I just hope they don't call on me. Let them know ahead of time. Hey, I need 2 minutes on the ABC project. I really just need to know time, target, budget update, and you're in and you're out. If you could plan that, for our meeting tomorrow, I would appreciate it. Done. So make an agenda, stick to it. Start and end on time. Use the weird time if that will help you. If not, definitely stick to a starting point and an ending point, and end on time, and be mindful of that. Have your phone in airplane mode if you're the presenter, maybe using the timer, that sort of thing, so you can stay. And one tip on the agenda, I have some clients that actually say, meetings start 9 a.m. or 9:01, whatever weird time they're using, and then the next point has a time that they should be there, so they can stay even time specific as they move through the agenda. Number 3, ban electronic devices. Number 4, encourage everyone to contribute to the meeting, to be part of the meeting. And I said one of the best ways to do that would be to actually send the information out ahead of time, giving them any reference, supporting material, and making sure that they know, hey, I only need 30 seconds, I just need 2 minutes, that sort of thing, so that they are comfortable. And it is an environment of where people contribute. One final tip on that, make sure you reward the good behavior. If somebody presents something and you can tell that's uncomfortable for them, don't make a big deal about it, but at least say, hey, Bob, thanks for that. That was very good. I appreciate your input. Make sure you get it in an environment of where you're encouraging people who are contributing in a positive way to the meeting. Now, what I want to do is I want to turn it over to Lori, because these last 2 tips definitely fall in line with what Lori is the best at doing. And so I'm going to turn it over to Lori right now for 2 more tips on how to create a productive meeting.
Hey, everybody. Those are great, Eric. And I got to tell you, we're already getting questions about some of the things you said. So I'll quickly run over a couple of tips right here, and then let's open it up to just some of the questions that I know you and I get, and also some of the questions that I know are on here on our list here. Our next tip is about staying on purpose, because Eric mentioned staying on agenda. Specifically, I think it's really important that we remember to stay on purpose. And in order to do this, this actually refers to one of the tips that Eric just gave you, which is, first of all, for goodness sakes, let's have an agenda. The thing is that there's a secret trick to your agenda that will help everyone in the room stay on purpose. And that is, make sure that your agenda is not a list of topics. It should be a list of objectives. So for instance, if your agenda says we're going to talk about the holiday party, what happens now is you guys get to start talking about the holiday party and somebody raises their hand and says, well, I think this year we should invite spouses. Well, that isn't what you wanted to talk about. You wanted to talk about choosing a theme. You wanted to talk about whether or not you're going to have music, or you wanted to talk about, whether it was going to be a potluck or whether the company was going to pay for it, whatever it is. But by putting a topic of holiday party on your agenda, you have opened up a can of worms and said, anyone who has anything to do with the holiday party, anything you have to say about the holiday party, come on in and talk. And that's not what you want, because you will lose complete control if you have only that. And most of you have that experience, and it's not just about holiday parties. So instead, what you want to do is you want to make sure that your agenda has a specific objective. So it doesn't say holiday party, it says choose the topic for the holiday party. It doesn't say talk about a campaign. It doesn't just say campaign. It says determine budget for a campaign or determine theme for a campaign, whatever that is. Guys, what that does for you is, first of all, it helps people focus on that before they ever walk in the meeting. But it also says that the minute someone raises their hand and says, are we inviting spouses this week or this year for the holiday party, someone and everyone in that room has not only the right, but they have the responsibility to raise their hand, to speak up and say, I thought we were focusing specifically on the theme, not on whether or not we should invite spouses. Let's put spouses on a parking lot and we'll make that decision at a future meeting. That one trick alone, you guys, will save you a ton when it comes to staying on purpose. Now, that means that the person in charge of the meeting needs to make sure that they're identifying that specific objective. If it's your item, if you are putting something on the agenda, make sure that it's defined by objective, not just topic. And if you happen to be the person who's running the meeting, for goodness sakes, ask for people to identify a specific objective, not just the topic. It changes the way you guys run your meetings. It will change the productivity of your meetings. See, I'm a believer that people don't hate meetings. I believe people hate meetings where they feel like nothing got done. And when we sit around and talk about the same things over and over and no action gets taken, or when we get completely derailed and a meeting that should have taken 30 minutes takes 3 hours, that's when people start hating meetings that we run. So once you identify that objective, instead of just the topic, you're going to find that your meetings are much more effective. They stay on purpose and they feel like things got done. So that's your next tip. Here's your other tip. And that is, make sure that you're taking what I call public meetings, public minutes. And what that means is not just minutes, Susie moved that and Bob seconded that, and not that. No, what you need is you need a flip chart, a dry erase board, even a PowerPoint slide that's up there, something that is in public that everyone can see for the entire meeting. Now, what happens is throughout the conversation, somebody says, oh gosh, somebody better call so-and-so and ask them about the such and such. And the person running the meeting can now say, you're right, who's going to do that? Bob, you're going to do that? Great. And then every action item that you guys identify, every action item, you write it up on the board. You say, who's going to do this? Bob, you're going to do this? When are you going to have it done, Bob? Next Tuesday? Great. Now, by the end of the meeting, what you have is it's a beautiful checklist, just an action item list. And it's got a name next to it, and it's got a deadline next to it, or at least an expected deadline. Here's what I love about this. One, no one leaves the meeting without knowing what they're responsible for. Because how many times have we left and gone, now who's going to do that? Am I supposed to do that? Is Bob going to do that? No one leaves the room without knowing exactly who's assigned that. The other thing that I really love about that is the accountability factor, that you said you were going to have it by Tuesday. So unless we hear differently from you, we're going to hold you to what you said. Now notice the language there. Unless we hear differently from you, we're going to hold you to that. What that means is if there's a problem, and there will be, many times there will be, but unless we hear differently from you, we're going to expect that by Tuesday this will be done. Here's the thing I really love about public notes. That, again, I don't believe people hate meetings. I believe people hate meetings where they feel like nothing got done. And when you leave that room and you have a flip chart or a dry erase board or a smart board or a PowerPoint slide that you've created, and you actually have a list of 10 things, people go out of there and go, oh my God, we got a lot done today. And that matters. I think that's really, really valuable. So there are your 6 tips. Eric, let's answer some questions here, because I think we've got several here. One of them that you talked about was prep.
Yeah.
And I've got a tip that I can throw in there that I think will be really valuable for people, and that is how you ask them to look at information. I don't know about you, but I have sat in on association meetings and corporate meetings where I know nobody looked at their stuff. I know nobody did anything. And you want them to come, and you want them to be prepared, and you want them to, and it just doesn't happen. So in addition to having prep work, here's what you want to do. When you send your email out that says, when you come to this meeting, bring some ideas. Don't ever use the word some. People are funny. And when you use the word some, what they do is, well, I'll think of something and I'll contribute when I get there. Instead, you can send the exact same meeting and simply use the word to. When you come to the meeting, bring 2 ideas. When you come to the meeting, be prepared to contribute 2 things. Whatever it is. And what you'll find is that the average person will actually bring 2 instead of 0. So sure in your prep that you're doing that.
Yeah, I think that goes a lot to the no, I think that goes just a lot to the idea of prep here. And we're talking specifically right now, I know, to the people who put on meetings. But really, if you're looking to get more out of these meetings, and again, if you're in a leadership role and you're conducting this meeting, you want to get more out of your people. It really shows a lot when you come in, dialed in, this prepped and ready to go.
Very definitely. You know what, Eric? Another thing, and I think this is for you to talk about, is maybe talk to the group a little bit about how setting those odd times, starting on time, talk to them a little bit about how it's all about habit, your reputation.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons it works.
Yeah, the conditioning factor here is huge, and that's why the weird times work. It shows, one, that you've dialed in. You've actually thought about how much time you need. Now, I have some people. I was thinking about this as Lori was talking to you. I have some people that don't necessarily use a weird time like 9:11 or 10:01. Mm-hmm. They will say at 9 o'clock we're going to have a 38-minute meeting. And those things they go so far as, I mean, like Lori said, most people don't hate meetings. They hate the meetings that just run amok and nothing gets done and we have them for no reason and all we do is carry over business to the next one. But when you send a message that we're going to have a 38-minute meeting or we're going to start at 9:11 and you get known for, he has an agenda. And by the way, having an agenda is not a bad thing here. He has an agenda that he actually wants to stick to and work through. These things condition people that his meetings aren't so bad. Those meetings aren't so bad. We actually get things done. And I know some of you have probably thought up already, well, people don't like having things assigned to them and that sort of thing. They do. In these meeting environments, if they're set up so that it starts here and it ends here and it never runs over and it stays on point and on focus, people like knowing kind of what's expected of them. And so this whole thing goes into the conditioning process. And I have some people that I've worked with over the years that follow these things to the T, right down to the letter, and they get a lot of buy-in out of their staff. And I'm talking of leaders, in leadership positions, but they just get so much out of this, of doing all these things. So when you think of conditioning and you think of doing this, the order is in having this level of discipline. It's not a cumbersome process.
No, I mean, you get so much out of it. You know what, Eric, I used to work I lived in Hackettstown, New Jersey, and that's where they make M&Ms. If you turn your package of
that's right.
It lists Hackettstown. And I had a client who actually had M&M as her client. And one of the things that she had bartered with them is all the M&Ms she wanted for a year. And so she was using them for client gifts and everything else. Well, interestingly, she would hold meetings. And in her meetings, she would bring, one of those cookie tins that, big, thick cookie tins.
Yeah.
Fill that with M&Ms. And she would put that in the middle of the table when her meeting was getting ready. And she'd take the cover off. Now, the minute the meeting was supposed to start, let's say the meeting was starting at 9 o'clock. The minute that meeting starts, she put the cover on the M&M can. Now, that was her way of saying the meeting is starting, no more M&Ms. Now, here's what I thought was so cool, was so interesting, and what was really working for her. What's happening is that during breaks then, she'd take the cover off. But when the break was over, she'd put it on. Well, it didn't take people long to figure out that if you wanted M&Ms, by God, you better be back there when it was time for that meeting to start. She had us ready to go just for, and people are unbelievable when it comes to food, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. That's another conditioning thing right there. Yeah. Exactly.
Oh my God. But things I wouldn't spend a dime on our own if they give it to us for free at a meeting, maybe
right.
Showing up just to make sure we get our share of the food. So share food in limited amounts. Isn't that the rule?
Yeah, right. Have some control over that.
Yeah, don't put quite enough bagels out and everybody will get there because, well, the bagels are all gone if you show up late.
Right. And he orders just enough coffee so everybody can have one medium or, grande Starbucks sized cup. So you better get there early if you want your cup.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? One other thing, will you talk to them a little bit about setting an adjournment time and hold that adjournment time and why that's so important? I think that's good information for this group, for this topic.
I think that again, just goes into the conditioning and sending the message that, we have some control here over this stuff. We're not going to let it run amok. I mean, my take on the starting time and ending time is, again, and it falls into what I tell people to do every day is, have some control over your schedule, have some control over the time that you can work with and control. And one of these is, the start and ending time. And I think the ending time is important because I think you go into this mode toward the end of the meeting where you're summarizing, you're assigning, you're recapturing information. And so again, this is also the chance for people who have something new that didn't quite make it on the agenda. Yeah. It's their chance to raise their hand and it's go time. And so I think we build toward this, but I do think we have to call it at a certain point.
Yeah. And you know what, too, I notice, and again, those of you that have worked with me in the past, you know this about me. I live in the Washington, D.C. area. So I see a lot of things there. And if you watch the news, you'll see this. You notice when Congress has a recess coming up, how they get a lot done. They might not get done for months, but by gosh, when that recess is coming up and people want to go home, they get so much more done in those last 3 days. And I suspect that happens with your meetings as well. What happens is we say, okay, you guys, we're going to be done at 4 o'clock today. And people start watching their clock. And Susie Student, who likes to ask 97 questions, all of a sudden she doesn't have any questions because the meeting's supposed to adjourn in 5 minutes. And all of a sudden, people who just keep adding stuff that's just repetition after repetition, just complete redundancy, now they don't raise their hand to repeat something anymore because, well, that adjournment is coming up. And not only that, but I find that people police themselves and others when you announce adjournment time. People are funny. If we don't announce that adjournment time, people will push us on till 7 o'clock at night instead of 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I find that the minute we name that adjournment time, now you got to stick to it because I mean, you know this, Eric. If you and I are doing a seminar and we tell people we're going to be done at 4, at 3:45, people are packing up because traffic is coming and because we've told them. So it's a good idea to announce a very realistic adjournment time and a little bit of a buffer in there because people behave differently when they know we're about done. And then, to be fair, and I'm just a real believer in making sure people get what they need. So that doesn't mean just shutting them off. It means saying, I'd be happy to talk to people later, submit your questions on email, whatever it is. But having that, which brings up another thing, Eric, you talked about making sure everybody has input. Don't you think that we should be allowing them not just input in the meeting? I mean, let's face it, the number one fear among American professionals, fear of speaking in public. So,
speaking in public.
Yeah. What other kind of avenues can we give people to give input if they if they are afraid to raise their hand because it's controversial, or they just aren't comfortable.
And that's interesting. I just got a Facebook Messenger question, and it said, "What are the?" They were giving us credit, Lori. I'm assuming they're younger, but they said they liked our old school. Having someone take notes and then maybe posting the notes on a big whiteboard or a flip chart. But they asked if there are any electronic modern versions of these things. So yes, let me give you these right now.
Nice. I think it's just been called old.
we did, but that's okay, because I easily identify with old school, and some of it still works. I just keep my mind open to some of these new things, and I am aware of them, and I'll give you those right now. So I'm answering two questions. I'm answering one: what are the alternatives to the whiteboard in the room that obviously has to be left there, maybe, or the flip chart? What are the modern versions? And then I'm answering question number two, which is, what if you do have some people that really have good ideas, but they aren't going to say anything no matter what? But we need to have an avenue for those people to voice their ideas. So one is Slack. Slack is an app. It's web-based, it's phone-based, and it's a way for people to have a conversation about a topic. So you get a moderator, and then you can post like an agenda point, for example. If we want to take it right to Lori's question or idea, how do you get those people to talk? Put the agenda item as a single point in Slack and let the communication roll. And you'll get some people who are really, really good. Now, your millennials, your younger employees will really like this, because they can communicate with the laptop, and they're very good at communicating with that texting, mentality. So encourage that. Asana is another one. It is a piece of software, app-driven, also software-based, that you can use to have some communication in there. So you could set up a to-do or a topic and let the communication roll in there. Number three, have a company, an association, group, maybe the title of the meeting, you have a secret Facebook page. That means that nobody else can be on it except the people that are allowed into it. And that is used for, here's the agenda. And by the way, here, all you're doing is Facebooking. Here are my comments. Boom, boom, boom. And now the people that want an avenue will have it.
And they don't have to do that even on Facebook sometimes. I mean, a lot of companies, a lot of you probably have intranet.
Mm-hmm.
You can go into or create chat rooms or team rooms where you can discuss things like that don't have to be in person. A lot of people are doing that. You know what, just before you throw that flip chart and that whiteboard under the bus there, Eric, and whoever wrote that question, just keep in mind that one of the purposes of doing that is to put it in public where everyone can see it at once, so that there is an accountability there. Because let's face it, sometimes in these meetings we do need that guilt factor and that accountability factor just to make sure that it's there. What I would do with that, quite frankly, and I have one client in particular that I know does this a lot, is she just makes all the notes and then she takes a picture of the note and she texts it over.
Perfect.
There you go.
Yeah. It was on my list, and you can do that. You can have your flip chart, you can have your whiteboard, have your scribe, take a picture of it, and then again send it out via email to everybody, or using Slack, Asana, Evernote, a group page, an intranet. You can post it there, and then everybody now has the visual notes. Going just one step further with this. And by the way, just to let you know, we covered 6 tips. We've covered questions. Later, in all the avenues that we have with this training, we're going to post a PDF of the full 10 tips that Lori and I use to encourage clients and customers to put on a productive meeting. But the follow-up is key. And I don't want to go into this too much because it's on the tip sheet, but I just wanted to give you an idea here that one of the best ways to do this is you have your individual follow-ups. If you're a leader, if you're running the meeting, go around to people at whatever schedule you set up and do a little follow-up. Okay, you assigned it in the meeting, but then there needs to be some manual. There needs to be some legwork done. The rubber's got to meet the road at some point to get things done. Do some individual follow-ups. Lori, we have just a few moments left. Do you have any other questions? I have another question here, but do you have any other questions?
You know what? The probably the question that I get most about meetings, and you can see it in all the things that we're sharing here today, is what if the big boss interrupts me? What if there's someone in the room that's a real authority, and he or she is 2 or 3 levels up over me, and what if they're the person? And so I think just a real reality check for you and I, Eric, is to make sure that folks understand, we get that. We get that we don't write your checks. We get that in a big way. And so just a real reality check here is that you need to do what you can do. Just because you can't do all of this doesn't mean you don't do some of this. Like Eric said when he was talking about the electronics, I know very well that some of you were thinking, holy smokes, I can't do that. Okay, then don't ask everybody to turn in their phones, but how about you ask everybody to take the phones off the table? How about you ask them to put them in their pocket and put it on vibrate? How about you ask them to, just as a professional courtesy, ignore their phones for the next 20 minutes. And you know what? People don't like to do it for an hour, but if you ask them for 20 minutes, and then be sure to tell them what time break time will be. Tell them, you guys, we're going to take a break in 10 minutes. You know how Eric talked about 38-minute meetings? People will put their phones away for 38 minutes, but they won't put them away for 2 hours. And when you get the reputation as a person who runs a meeting for 28 minutes, not for 2 hours, people go, you know what, I can afford to do that. I find personally, and Eric, you can probably attest to this as well, that as soon as I tell them we're going to take a break at this time, people don't even think about putting their phones away. They just do it. They know they're going to return the phone call in 45 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is. It's easy. It's when we don't tell them where that safety point is. I think that's the difference. And again, just a reality check, guys. We know we don't write your checks, but just because you can't do all of it doesn't mean you don't do some. And that's what it's about. When the big boss interrupts or says you can't, okay. But I will tell you one thing. I do a lot of work for Pfizer. And I know that at one point a new president came into Pfizer, and it made him so mad that people were showing up late to meetings that he actually locked the doors as soon as the meeting started. I'm telling you, people are not on the other side of that door very often, because if you got stuck on the outside of that door, you couldn't go in until break time. And I'm telling you, that man, and to this day when I go to Pfizer and run a meeting, people are not in the room when the meeting starts. People are in the room with their cup of coffee, sitting down with their notepads open. And I'm impressed. He trained them that, by gosh, when the meeting starts, the meeting starts. So it can work. Do what you can. None of us can do it all, so do what you can. Eric, why don't you bring us home?
All right. Let's do one last question. It's loaded, but we'll do a real rapid fire here. How often should I be having
quickly, Eric, we're on
meeting?
2.5 minutes, okay?
Okay. How often should I have a meeting? What do you say, Lori?
No more often than I have to.
Right. And my tip on that, and we can do more on this, folks, but my tip on that is anything that you have to have collectively them hear or you want information from, that's your frequency. Ask yourself, could any of this be done one-on-one or smaller groups, or don't need 12? I could have 3, that sort of thing. So try to break it down. Guys, I really appreciate you being here. I know Lori does as well. As I said, we're going to post this up on our social media sites for you. I'm going to also post the 10 full tips to how Lori and I encourage clients and customers, coaching clients and full groups of people to put on meetings. And if you have any questions or any feedback on any of these, please send us your questions. Our email address, our direct Facebook messengers are all open and available for this. And I hope you guys got something out of this. Make sure you take your notes, get the worksheet, expand, and put on some productive meetings. Lori?
You know what? Based on the questions that we're still getting, it looks like we need to take a couple of other deep dives into several of the tips that we've given. So we'll get that down the road, folks. This live program that Eric and I are doing right now, it's live with Eric and Lori, and I know we're doing some things separately as well in our own Facebook groups for our own coaching clients. We're really excited about how well this is going and finding that a lot of people are giving us great feedback on it. So we're really excited about it. Glad you guys are getting some things out of it. And reach out. Ask us the questions. We're here for you. So let's make sure that you guys get the answers that you need. Best of luck.
Thanks, Lori.
Talk to you soon. Bye now.